Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Hello, everybody. On this episode, we are hearing from a stay-at-home mom of four with a degree in biotechnology who previously did DNA sequencing at the UCSD Cancer Center. She ran marathons in the past, but has been competing for 6 and going on 7 seasons after 12 national shows, 7 top 5 placings, and a few placings so close to a pro card that she could taste it. She finally earned it, and now she's done 3 pro shows, placing in the top 10 2 times. Welcome to the show, Sarah Devore. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Celeste. Thank you. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, me too, of course. And before we get into everything I've got planned, do you have a ritual or something that you do right before your heel hits the stage?
Okay, so I've been listening to your podcast, and I kind of go like, oh shoot, like because a lot of people have said, or quite a few people have said that like they just like to be in their own space and like even sit down and relax and just be super like chill. And I'm like, oh dang it, like I hope I'm not haven't like totally bugged people because I'm like completely the opposite. Like when I'm getting on stage, I don't know what it is, but I get this like, I don't know, I'm like such a chatterbox. I'm just like so happy and just like talking to everyone. And so I feel like, especially because on stage you want to show like personality and look like you're having fun. And for me, like that's not something that you just turn on like that first step on stage. Like it kind of starts beforehand. Like I have to already be like happy and excited to be there. And so that totally like carries over, and that's like how I am backstage. But I'm also always like practicing my posing backstage. Like a lot of people are just standing in line, and I am always like posing, trying to, because posing's hard for me. So I am just literally constantly running through my routine. That's what I do.
That's good to hear.
Sorry to anyone. I feel bad too because on the pro stage, like they always line you up alphabetically. So like I'm always next to certain people. You know what I mean? Like whoever's like a E or F. So sorry if you're like a last name E or F and you're like always next to me. I'm just gonna be a little chatty.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. There was one other person on the show who, what you were saying, it made me think of Stephanie and Torka. She was
I
like,
know.
yeah.
I heard her and I was like, I need to do a show with her. But you know what? I further up the line with the A. I'll just have to get out of line and go visit
Yeah,
her.
you should. You guys would get along. And I like that you said, you're always practicing your posing. I do the same thing. And some shows I'll like talk to the people when I'm like waiting in line when they line up like 2 classes early, and we're all just kind of standing there like, okay, we're gonna be on the stage together. Like this is us. This is our little crew. And then it's like I know some people need to be in the zone, and I remember I turned to this girl who ended up winning the class, which was awesome. But I turned to her and I just started like chatting. I don't remember what I was saying. I was just saying whatever. And then I was like, she was just kind of like blankly staring in the other direction. I was like, I can read this. I know I should just stop. I like turned, and it was so awkward.
It was so clear that was not like her thing.
Yeah, it was very, very clear. So then I just did my own thing, talk to myself. It's fine. So I want to like dive into the topic of placings with you because obviously, just from the intro itself, you've had those ups and downs. So what do you personally do when it comes to show placings, or what has your outlook been on like judging feedback? Let's just dive into it.
Yes. Okay. I love this subject because literally like I've been all over the place, and it can be such, I mean, it's such a mental, it messes with your head. mentally. And let's see, 2017, I did Universe. Well, I did like seriously like 5 national shows, I think, that year.
Dang.
So I did Universe and I placed second. And they released the scorecard where it had the actual numbers. And I was like points away from first. Like there was just points that divided us. So some of the judges had actually put me in first.
Yeah.
But she just had more points, and she ended up winning overall. So she won out of all the classes, right?
Yeah.
And so that was exciting and it was motivating. And 2 weeks later, I did Masters Nationals in Pittsburgh, and I placed 6th, and I didn't even get a trophy.
Wow.
And it was just such, that's hard. That's hard. And it's hard because, everybody's cheering for you and they're sending you a text like, this is it. And you didn't even, my kids, and I didn't even come home with a trophy. And I've also been in other classes where because I compete Masters and Open, where like I've come out in one class, and then in a call out, but second, maybe third call out, it's just random. And not random, but, and so, and then the next class that's 45 minutes later came out and beat someone that was called out in a call out before me. Like it just,
wow.
It can really mess with your head if you sit there and nitpick those things. But, so first of all, the judges are supposed to, judge each class like fresh. So you can, maybe if someone came out and they're a little bit uncomfortable, didn't hit their poses quite right, but in the next class, they, kind of shaking off the jitters and really had a good personality and they hit their poses great. And the judges are like, well, yeah, she's looking really good right now, and move her up. A lot of times competitors with their scorecard afterwards and they're like, this is messed up. Why could I be better than her in this class and then not better than her in the next class? They're just supposed to look at it completely fresh. And I think it's also motivating because you literally have, a clean slate every time you walk on that stage.
Yeah.
And also placings depend on who your factors that play into it. I think also can be who you're standing next to, in comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
You just come out, they bring out 7 or 8, do front to back. And me, my physique is very slender. And so I can look, if you put me next to someone who's super muscular, it's going to make me look even smaller. You know what I mean? And so that can be a factor, and also in that comparison, when you come out, if you're on an end and maybe all the judges got a good view of your pose, factors like that can come into play. And so I think the biggest thing I learned on the national stage is that anything can happen.
Yeah.
First of all, anything can happen, but that you always to never count yourself out, because you can literally come from 6th place and win your class the next competition.
Yeah.
There's competitors that I've consistently competed with over the years that we've flip-flopped. I'll place above her one show, she'll place above me a different show. You're not always, you always have a shot. And so just always give it everything, but don't let it get in your head too much with the placings. Don't get down on yourself.
Yeah,
because
I
they're
like
subjective.
that.
They're subjective. It's someone's opinion, right? It's not like a race where it's like a clear cut, like you cross the finish line first, like you win.
Right, exactly. And even like Robin was telling us, she was like, yeah, like judges sometimes we don't know your name, we don't always have your name, and we're looking at your body, your aesthetic, and that's what we're judging on before anything else anyways. And she's just sharing like a lot of those like the way the judges actually do it. And so as a competitor, that's helpful to know, like, okay, yeah, like keep your head straight, keep believing in yourself. And I know that for you, when it came to actually receiving your pro card, like you didn't even think you were capable of attaining it at first, right? So what led to those
Yeah,
goals changing and progressing over time?
yeah. So I clearly remember the first time training with my coach, Shane Hughley. Because he lives in Utah too, and so I drove up and did a few workouts with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was training. Was qualified for the national stage, and I was training for my first national show. And I told him, I was like, I just want to get on the national stage just to experience. Like, I know, I said, I'm like, I know that I can't get my pro card. I felt like 4 kids, like I've had 3 of them were C-section. Like, I just felt like my body had been through so much that there's no way I could, truly like get to that level. And I was fine with that. My goal was to look like I belonged on the national stage. And he didn't. He didn't say anything. He didn't say like, "Oh yes, you can," or like, just the conversation just kept going. You know what I mean? Like it
Yes.
wasn't like I was asking for like to be petted. I just truly felt that way, And then as I competed, and I thought, my next goal was, okay, let's place top 10, let's place top 5, and they became more realistic goals. And there was at one point where I realized, like, you know what, like, I can get my pro card, like it's a possibility, like it's actually something attainable. And then there was a point where it's like, you know what, I will, like, it's just a matter of time, but it's going to happen. And it's just like a progression. And it progressed as I grew, like made changes to my physique and just became more confident as a competitor.
So now that you are a pro, what does that like mean to you or for you? Like, why does that matter to you now?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's reaching a goal. It's accomplishing what I set out as a goal. And but honestly, what makes reaching, attaining that goal so valuable to me is the years and the shows and the like that it took to get there. You know what I mean? Like it took 12 national shows. But that's what makes it so valuable to me, is because I put in all that time.
Yeah.
And like the real thing that makes it valuable is the effort that it took to get there.
I love that. It's almost like this physical representation, this tangible thing you can hold and look at and go, yep, this represents everything I've put in. Like this is like something I can see, aside from what I've already felt in my heart and experience, as this soul, being a human. Like aside from that, I can actually like hold this card and know, like, I look at it like
it represents that work.
Yeah. And when I hear your story, it's like 12 national shows. Like so many of us want to win in like one national show, 2 national shows, because some people have, and then there's people who don't. But it's like it's not always your time, and it may not always be your time. Even when you're so close, it might not even be your time. So I think like that just adds so much depth to your story and the probably the value that it holds for you as well. So you had mentioned
Oh,
too.
and you know what?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But you said feedback. And so feedback actually came
Oh,
into play a
yes.
lot with my national shows too. I got a lot more comfortable with um, talking to judges and asking for feedback. And Sandy's always great about responding to emails and giving encouraging and very thorough, I think, feedback. But I've also gone out of my way to get feedback from other judges, because all the judges on the panel are, you know, putting who their top 5 are. That's how they determine that first call out, and so their opinion matters too, and like a lot.
Yeah.
And so like a couple of times, like in Pittsburgh for like North Americans or Masters Nationals, I would stay. I seriously kind of like scope out for the judges when they're just out and about afterwards. And I kept my like take a screenshot of your stage pictures as soon as they're posted, front and back. And I would just go up to introduce myself. I'd say, hi, my name's Sarah Devore. And I just, you know, placed. You don't talk to them till after finals, till after you've like placed. But you know, I just say I just competed in, you know, bikini class F, and you know, I'd like wondering if you could give me feedback, and then you show them your pictures, because there's no way they're gonna remember you from looking at you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I've done that quite. I got to a point where I felt very comfortable being able to do that, and just like they recognize me, like they know me. Once I got on the pro stage, like I know like a lot of those judges, because I've literally been around the block on the national scene so much that even though it's their first time seeing me as a pro, like it's not their first time seeing me, you know?
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's a lot of benefit to that.
Yeah, totally. It's like human nature, right? You become it's like the more you see someone, you feel like you know them, like they're part of your usual routine, you know, and when
Yeah.
it's like going to the gym and you see someone all the time. You may not talk to them all the time, you know, but you always
Yeah.
see them. They're gonna be there. And
yeah, you kind of like know them even though you don't know their name. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was like kind of about to go away from that. So I'm glad that you had brought it up, because it is important. And I think getting feedback, that was something I was also uncomfortable with, because I would always just ask my coach, like my coach also would know, like I know what the feedback's going to be, like we know where you need to improve. And then one time I had asked for feedback and never heard back, and I was like, okay. And then like one time I was like, I'm getting feedback regardless. Like it was my last show of the season. I wanted feedback for the improvement season. And like, I'm really glad I asked, because even like a little piece of feedback can like also be like motivating. Like it can be mentally nice. And one time after a show, like one of the judges came up to me and was like, you brought a way better package this show than your last one. Like you were and he just started talking to me about it, and I was like, that was really meaningful, because it showed like dedication to showing up to these shows over and over and over again.
That's what you want, just to, you know, to be able to show that you're improving and that someone recognizes it is you know, just means the world, especially when it's a judge. But I think so feedback is good to make that, you know, connection. They realize you're a serious athlete, like, you know, and you're really wanting to improve. That gives them a little bit of insight into you. And then I also think too, with feedback from judges, a lot of times, like, you know, their feedback's based on what they saw on stage. And so it may be, you know, like you need more up top. That's what I always get. Like you need more up top, or, you know, tighter in the hamstrings or something like that. But your coach knows your physique. You know what I mean? And so maybe it's not necessarily that you need more up top, but that's what it looks like because of how you're standing, and maybe you need to change your posing so that you can showcase that you're not small up top. Or maybe it was the way, you know, like you carved up, or whatever you did beforehand on stage, that like, you know, literally you do have that hamstring look, but whatever you did beforehand didn't showcase it. You know what I mean? So your coach is the one that's going to be able to take that feedback and be like, okay, you know, like with your physique, like I know this is what you need. You know what I mean? So a lot of times,
Great point.
that feedback can kind of mess with your head too, but it's just based off of what they're seeing in that moment, you know?
Exactly. And like, especially if you're feeling a certain way within yourself, it's nice to like hear that from someone else also, or to have like the tools you need. It's like any athlete in any sport, if they're not, let's say they're not first string, they're gonna ask, what do I need to do to improve? You know, what do I need to do to be put out there and not be questioned if I'm ready for it? And that's like the same thing in this sport, and you just have multiple people telling you how you can improve, and being open to that is important. And for you, you know, you said that you're usually you are more slender, so being next to someone with maybe a lot more muscle mass can you look smaller. But you know, you used to run marathons, and you've mentioned in post before like makes it difficult for you to put on more muscle mass. So first of all, why did you stop running marathons? And then second of all, like how did you begin developing into a bodybuilder?
Okay, I think that there's two goals, like they don't go together at all, but the mindset does, because as a runner, I had, you know, woke up every morning and I had like this many miles I was doing today, and I was trying to hit this pace. You know, it was a goal, and that's the same thing that I love about training. I'm working towards a goal. I wake up every morning with a purpose to my workout, and I stopped running because I reached my goal in that my goal was to qualify and to run the Boston Marathon, and it took me 2 years to reach that goal. I missed my qualifying time by 2 minutes twice.
Oh my gosh!
It was like it challenged me like mentally in so many ways. Exact same as competing does, and as my journey to getting my pro card. I feel like that's kind of like my pattern for life. Like things don't come easy for me. I have to work really hard for them, but that's what makes me appreciate it the most. And so I ran the Boston Marathon twice. My first year was actually the year of the bombs.
I was gonna ask you about that. What was that like?
I know it's surreal. It was very surreal. I had already crossed the finish line, and I was walking back to my hotel, and my friend who I ran with, or had flown there and was staying with, she actually crossed the finish line just like a couple minutes before, and she was like in a daze. Like she sent me a text and she said, "There's bombs. I'm on my way home." Like, it was just like, did she mean? I didn't even understand what she meant. And we just, I mean, we were kind of like on lockdown afterwards. Like we weren't allowed to like leave our hotels, and there's like SWAT vehicles everywhere. It was really like surreal.
I can't even imagine being there in that moment.
I know.
Like, you see videos of this kind of stuff, you see pictures, and you see the outcomes as well, and it's like, wow, this is just scary. And then you go places like that, or you do things like that, and you know, you can't let the fear get to you, but it doesn't mean it's not distant in your mind, you know? That's crazy.
Right.
So
but I reached my goal in running. My goal was to qualify. I didn't have another goal in that area, and I had been introduced to competing through a friend who did figure, and I've been to a lot of competitions and watched her, and I was excited about trying that new thing. And I think a big factor too in that switch was I was really small as like light. My weight was light as a runner. But I didn't love the way my body looked. And normally, if you don't love the way your body is looking or you want to make some changes, like you think, well, you should lose weight, right? But I was like, no, I shouldn't lose weight because there's no way 110 pounds at 5'6", that you should ever have to lose weight.
Right.
And so I figured the change had to be made a different way. And so I was super excited to try to put on muscle and to see, what change that could bring.
That's amazing. And I know for you, like a lot of times that muscle comes in improvement season. And for you, after a show, you find that personally you prefer to stay within like 7 pounds of your stage weight. So, for some women, I've spoken with, this is almost impossible for them. They notice more muscle
Right.
when they don't do it. For some, it is like their necessity too. Like as you've listened to, I'm sure as well, like for some, they have to do that. So you tend to find that the less weight gain, the better for you. So what is your approach to reverse dieting?
Okay, so the last 2 years, I've actually, my coach has reversed me into my final competition to the point that, like, after my last competition, I was completely reversed. Like, I walked into nationals in Miami, eating 200 grams of carbs a day, doing 20 minutes of cardio. Like,
wow,
I can live with that. You know what I mean? Like, but before that, so I tried and so what you said is right. Like every body is different. Like there isn't just one way that's right. And I feel like the more I learn in this sport, the more I realize like there's not just one way to do things, and so I had tried in the past, in the off season to like get my carbs up as high as I could and, so that I could cut on fewer, cut with a higher macros or whatever, like I've seen other people can do. And I was meticulous in consistently increasing my macros slowly so I didn't put on too much unnecessary body fat. And by the time I started prep, I was like, it's like 10 to 12 pounds above my stage weight. For a lot of people, that's not a lot. But guess what? That prep was my hardest prep. Like, so even though I'd gotten my macros up higher than I'd ever had them, and thought that I could, and was doing no cardio, like thought that I'd be able to like cut on higher numbers and stuff like that. That's not how it is for me. And I was down to like 100 grams of carbs or less. I think the last couple of weeks before the show, I was like veggie only carbs and doing 90 minutes of cardio. It was my hardest prep ever. So that route doesn't work for me. And so post show after that one, where it was such a hard prep, I had to be very careful coming out of it so that I didn't put fat on too quickly. And I kind of threw like I'm just really conservative in my increases. I usually do my reverse diet in my off season on my own. I'll check in with my coach like every month or something. He knows me because we've worked together for so long, and he just, trusts me, and he'll just be like, hey, you're good. But I would add in like percentage wise, like I would add in like 5 to 10% more carbs and fat like every week. Like literally, if it was 6 grams, I'd add 6 grams, like, and work my way up. And I did that after that really hard prep for my off season, and literally reversed all the way to the stage. Like I had been so like meticulous through the off season that once I turned the reins over to my coach, he's like, "You're still like good. Let's just keep going with this." And so I don't know. Every prep's different, but I found that for me, I do the best if I stay closer, and I think my body is fine with that. My body doesn't fight me.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Because I think some people, their body is fighting them at a leaner point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up. I think, like regardless, like obviously reverse dieting in some format, if that is like within your personal circumstance and needs, is a responsible thing to do. And um
Yeah,
everybody is different, like you said, and for some
for
people, like
sure.
they need to, and for some people they don't need to. But I think regardless,
Yeah,
like um you had mentioned in one of your posts that I really appreciated, and I've actually heard in some podcasts before too, or just read from others as well, as like our body cues after a show can be all over the place and we can't always trust them. But
yeah,
the better we are at reverse dieting, the easier prep can usually be, again within personal circumstances. So when you think about your own approach and how that has been beneficial for you and how you've learned from it, how has it been able to help you actually improve your um, like muscle mass and grow? Because some people might be like, I could never do that, but for other people they're like, oh my gosh, I put on so much from this process, which I just think is cool to hear about the different stories. So how have you been able to see like an increase in muscle mass from that?
So, that's a good question. I feel like my growth um, isn't just a season. Like I literally have been able to grow going into shows, and it comes down to how I'm, how hard I'm training, and I am pretty like meticulous with like supplements and just giving my body every opportunity um, to grow, like my, like sleep and I mean, I like ice baths, like to help my body recover, like it's not just my growth isn't just in
It's
the
not
off
seasonal.
season. I think because I don't have to cut so hard during prep that I'm able to do that. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
rolling into nationals, at 200 grams of carbs, like I could definitely be putting on muscle at that point.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that too, because it's not always seasonal and we can put on muscle even when we are prepping for a show. Like it's very possible. And if we're keeping the intensity of our workouts up and we're making sure that we're still pushing ourselves to lift heavier, like I can even look back at
Exactly.
like my last season and I was like going, and it was like I was still able to put on good size, like that you can actually see the difference too within like small periods of time, and really
Yeah.
meticulous reverses as well that felt like I was really mostly just on prep, but it was different. So I think
Yeah.
that that's a really good point.
Yeah. My growth's small. Like I don't really like comparing week to week like photo pictures or anything like that, but because sometimes I get discouraged. But when I take a bigger step back, like it adds up over time, like
Mm.
and like I've done a couple of posts where I post like from my first show to my last show, and it's like a huge change. But it's just a slow process for me getting there. I just have to work, like a turtle, keep my head down. Because sometimes I look at
Aw,
like transformation Tuesday pictures on it. Oh, that's
right.
amazing. You know what I mean? Like, what's wrong with me? I'm such a turtle. But
Slow and steady wins the
but it's
race.
me. That's my body. You know what I mean? And I think like so it's a little bit harder for me to put muscle on, but I'm grateful that my body doesn't fight me at a leaner body fat. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's just pros and cons, and you just work with what your body gives you.
That's so true. I really like that you brought gratitude to that as well. And I was thinking too, like, as we speak to our bodies, whether it's from like seeing other people's bodies, getting feedback, or anything else we've talked about, the way that we speak to ourselves about it or react to it can have so much more detrimental impact than the food we're eating, the workouts we're doing, like, or not doing. Like, it can have way more um negative impact on us because it'll create certain changes hormonally within our bodies that can work against our efforts. And I think about like if any show where I felt like maybe I wasn't bringing my best, like it would cause more stress in my body. When I went into an improvement season, I remember I was stressing about being perfect, that then I wasn't able to be perfect, and then it threw everything else off. So it's crazy, like
Yeah.
how much
The
mental.
mental. I
Mm-hmm.
know. I think that's like the biggest misconception because our sport on the outside looks just purely physical, right? But I think the mental strength that it takes is just as much, if not more. And I
Yep.
think you have to I don't know. Sometimes you just have to stop thinking and just do it. Just do your work and trust. You know what I mean? You trust your coach, and that he or she will make the changes necessary to bring you in. All you have to do is the work, and don't think.
Don't think, just do.
Yes.
One of my
Easier said than
friends,
done.
yes, one of my friends, AJ, always says, screw it, just do it. It's so true. And I think like something that's helped me is looking at the positive changes that have been made, like always staying focused on the good things, because those thoughts will come up. Like no matter how much mindset work you've done, personal development work you've done, like gratitude
Yeah.
statements you've written, like those things come up because, you know, that's how our brain functions, especially when we're go-getters who want to improve. So the most important thing, of course, is to focus on those positive aspects. Remind yourself, like you just said, trust the process.
And it's seriously something that I think you don't you always have to stay aware of, because I think no matter how many times I've done this, this is my 7th year competing, you still get that voice in your head. You still have doubts, you know what I mean? And so you constantly are having to keep yourself on track, you know?
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that. That's like a big reason why I started this podcast, to remind people like the mental game never stops. Like it
Yeah, it
doesn't
really
go
doesn't. At least not for me.
you don't get your pro card and all of a sudden, and I don't know this, but I know from talking to you guys, it's not like as soon as you get your pro card, all your problems go away and you never have a bad
No.
thought about your body again. Like,
And
no.
if you expect that, then you're gonna have a rude awakening. Because guess what? You wake up the next day and you're doing the same stuff you did the day before. It's not your life's not gonna change, because if you're waiting for your life to change because of that, then you're doing something wrong. You gotta be making those changes now, you know?
Yeah, great point. I like that a lot. And why wait for your life to change when you just have that power?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
kind of along these lines, in regard to like knowing that everybody's different, I wanted to bring up something. I've like touched on it on this show before, but after reading some of your stuff, I was like, okay, I feel like this is something that we can both really connect on and agree on. And
Okay.
it kind of goes along the lines of how sometimes people want to preach that there is like the best way of doing things. Like, oh, if you prep this
Oh,
way, you're wrong. If you prep that way, you're wrong. But even if
yeah.
you looked at it from like the lifestyle perspective and almost comparing without, again, not greater than or less than, always equal, it's like there are some people who belittle others for their choices or make them feel that something's wrong with them. Like, for example, some people in the body positive community will say like they are happier with extra weight on them, but in reality they're not healthier, and instead of facing that reality, they take it out on others who are both healthy and happy, but maybe are living a more extreme lifestyle or having extreme patterns like weighing their food or eating out of Tupperware. So I personally believe like there's a very fine line with this, and being someone who's obviously studied the nature of like eating disorders through the education that I have, there's a difference between
Yeah.
having an eating disorder and having an eating regimen and plan. So what is your personal take on
Right.
all of this? Like, have you ever felt like your influence was made to feel small just because someone, you know, or just because you never fought a battle like that or felt bad about those things? Like, you had written a really nice post about this. I'd like you to just share that with us.
Okay. So, I think what you're talking about it for in the post that I wrote was about how I kind of felt like I don't really have a story,
Mm-hmm.
in this industry, because there's so many accounts where they're just able to make such an impact for good on people's lives. Like, you know, someone who came from like an overweight background and, you know, have able to like make health like their lifestyle, and they're able to give people like that hope and support because they've been there. And then there's people who, you know, have an eating disorder past, and they, you know, found their way out, and they're helping those people who are fighting that battle right now. And I don't have a story like that. I have such compassion for people who are in those situations, but those aren't my personal experiences. And so I feel kind of like I don't have, you know, I would love to be able to help people out, but I don't have a story like that. And then I kind of realized like maybe my story is more that I'm like, that I am average. Like I don't have an extreme past or background. And because I find a lot of times those people sometimes get, you know, carried away in their own past experiences. So they'll set rules like, and I've seen posts where it's like, if you take, you know, a scale to a restaurant, or if you weigh your veggies, or if you have a big cheat meal after a competition, like you have a disorder, or you know what I mean, or you really shouldn't do that, or if you're not flexible dieting in the off season, or you know what I mean, like, and maybe those are things that are triggers for them, but that's not
Great point.
That's not me. I haven't had those struggles, and I don't feel like putting those parameters on things like, you know, like maybe that's what they need, but that's not for everyone. And it doesn't
Yeah.
mean, I don't know.
No, you're making complete sense. I totally agree. Like some
Okay, good.
Oh yeah, it's really good to hear you say that too, because like some people like if we were talking about something like fear foods, for example, like some people can have a fear food of chicken, but that doesn't mean they go around saying if you eat chicken, you have a problem, right? Just because they feel
Right.
it doesn't mean it causes problems for others. And it's really all about like the distress that it creates within us. And like if we're able to healthfully enjoy a meal without labels, then we're doing just fine, you know. And just like you said, like you
Yeah.
couldn't have said it better, like just because it's a trigger for one person doesn't mean it is for you. And I love that. And you know, you're genuinely happy and fulfilled, and you feel really great about this lifestyle. And you know, for some of these
Yeah.
problems, like they stem not from competing, but from like inner wounds that are surface through competing, which I learned. And you know, or other events in their
Yeah.
life,
But
which
it's hard for them to separate, you know, it's hard
yes.
for them to separate. And sometimes even for someone just average like me, like you repost, you're like, oh dang it, like am I messed up that like, you know
No.
what I mean? I ask them to put the sauce on the side, or like that I don't like eat everything that I want when I want it, because that's showing I have true freedom, or you know what I mean? But then I have to like kind of circle back and be like, no, I'm fine. Like I feel fine about exactly how to do things. Like I am completely happy, you know?
Exactly. And that's all that matters. Like it would only be a problem if you had a problem with it. Um,
Right.
so that's important, and
And
I'm
every
really glad.
person's different. Every
Yes.
person's different.
That's exactly right. It all comes down to perspective. At the end of the day, it's
Yeah.
about how the things you do and the things you think about and the things you believe actually make you feel and function in daily life. So, something
Yeah.
you also like to do is travel a lot, and you've traveled a lot on
Uh-huh.
prep. So, I think this is
Uh-huh.
something that's really amazing, and I admire it. Like, I've traveled on prep myself, but I personally prefer not to. Not that I had a bad or a rough time, but you know, just personally not my first choice.
Yeah.
But we can't put life on hold either, you know, for prep. And for
No.
you, you have a family who you're seeing the world with.
Yeah.
So how have you managed to go on
Yeah.
vacations like even 4 weeks out from a show?
Yeah. Okay. So I was thinking about it because you told me that we were going to talk about some of like the traveling. So I was thinking about it, and I was like, I seriously am like literally always traveling, like on vacation, on prep. And it's kind of like I've been to Brazil on prep. Last year I was in Thailand with my family, and came back 2.5 weeks out from junior nationals. which I came in too lean for. And
Oh,
I mean, I've been camping. I've been tent camping on prep. Like I
tent
just
camping?
tent camping. Yes, I just make it work. Like last year too. So Thailand internationals, came back home, and then my daughters had dance nationals in Las Vegas for a week, and so I went to Las Vegas with them. Flew straight from Las Vegas to Universe where I won my pro card. But like that is just like how I've done things. And this year we're taking the kids to Australia for over their spring break, and when I get back, I'll be 4 weeks out from my first pro show of the year. And so
Yeah.
so for me, okay, so first you kind of need to do a little like background, research, like figure out where you're going to train beforehand. I always bring a jump rope. I always bring bands. You can do cardio, wherever with that. Like when I go to dance competitions, I'm literally in like the stairwells of convention centers, like doing stairs and jumping rope, and like I get an awesome cardio session in. And then find out if there's going to be a fridge. Like Brazil was tricky because I was like in the Amazon and moving all around, and there was not like a fridge. So all the food I brought had to be like non-perishable.
Oh my
But
gosh.
I know,
What the
but
heck?
like Thailand and like everywhere else, I've been able to like bring food that needs to be like refrigerated. And so I always make like protein pancakes for 2 meals of the day, like prep them beforehand, freeze them in individual like Ziploc bags, just have them in my freezer, and then throw them in my 6-pack bag when I'm ready to go. And then I found if you're traveling like stateside, it's pretty easy. Like you can like, bring your chicken, prep chicken and stuff like that. But when we went to Mexico, I prepped like 10 pounds of chicken, and they confiscated it at customs, which was so sad. And so
Dang.
instead they didn't take our like prepackaged like lunch meat that was sealed. And so I feel like so I've kind of like erred on that side, like something that's sealed to take. Like we went to Europe with the kids over Thanksgiving, and so I just brought a bunch of like the nitrate-free lunch meat, like 6-ounce packages, and I freeze everything beforehand so that you throw it in your bag frozen. And I always bring those like Tyson chicken, like that's in a packet, not the can. I bring the packets. Like I brought those to Brazil. I always bring protein bars, and I always make sure to bring like a Quest type protein bar, because if it's one like a Fit Crunch that's like covered in chocolate, like Thailand, like if I was out on an excursion or something, it just would have melted all over. So I always
Yeah.
bring one that kind of like can withstand the heat. And like protein powders, I packed like baggies of oatmeal, and I like to pack, like sometimes I pack rice cakes, but those take up a lot of room. And so a lot of times I'll do like the lavish, like the Joseph lavish wraps, or the Joseph pitas are good to bring. But I just make it work, because I don't put my life on hold. I feel like this is my hobby. This is something that I love, and spending time with my family, making memories with my family is like of utmost importance. And so there's no way I would make someone else like pay the price, or like because of something that I want to do, you know?
Mm.
So I always go to family functions, and, you know, even if I'm bringing my food or go out to dessert with the kids, even if I'm not like eating that thing, I still sit with them and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what's your favorite part? Or, you know, like, still make it fun.
That's awesome, and that's a really great point too. I like those tips you just shared with us, and it's very possible, very doable. And you just mentioned, making memories with your family is of the utmost importance. And I wanted to talk to you about your family. And some moms question what kind of impact competing could have on their daughters, and you personally want to be a
Yeah.
role model for them. They're in their tween
Yeah.
years, and you make life
Yeah.
work while on prep. But what do you do to make sure that you don't avoid, social situations or check out while on prep?
Okay. So I have, 4 kids. I have a son who's 15, and then I have a daughter who's 12, a daughter who's 11, and a daughter who's 8.
Mm-hmm.
And, such like, impressionable years. And I feel like as a mom, like our responsibility, it's not just as a competitor. Any mom has like a responsibility of like patterning, healthy relationships with food for their children. And so I think the things I do that I think help set that example for my kids is I never complain about, like, for one, I never complain about my food. I never say I have to eat this, or it's my choice. Like, I actually really like my food. Like, I do macros, and so I'm like always love what I'm eating, and they see that I eat. Like, they see that I eat like a lot, often. You know what I mean? Like, pretty much every time I'm driving them somewhere in the car, I'm probably eating something too. So they see that I eat, and then and also I think it's really important to not talk negatively about your body. I think that's something probably like that's not just a competitor thing, right?
Oh yeah.
And but I think that makes a big impression on kids, and so I yeah, I just don't. I would not say anything. If anything, I talk about, like fueling my body, like to be strong, and how grateful I am that it can do the things that I ask it to do. And my girls are dancers, and so I always relate it to them, like you ask your body to do a lot, like you want to make sure you're giving it the proper fuel, and they totally like it makes sense to them, and they know that I love treats, and that that I do have treats, like especially because I do macros, like I have like a little something like every day, and so they see through my example, just through my actions, moderation in that. I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those are really great approaches to that. I love that you do that, and it sounds like you're really setting a great example, and making it not so much about like the end. It's not about the way, like doing this to make your body look a certain way or to fix yourself. It's about making sure you're feeling good, feeling strong, fueling your body to be strong. And I love, love, love what you said about how you said like you told your daughters you demand a lot from your body. It's important to fuel her properly. And I think
Yeah.
that that's a really, really great way to look at food, and especially like um, at any stage, not just competitors, but placing food outside of the way society's like developed it now is it's like food is a tool to get a body that you want, rather than seeing it as fuel or as something that actually like we need, regardless of what kind of food it is, like we need it. So I just love
Right.
that. I
I
think
think
that's great.
especially with kids, highlighting that is crucial, because you don't want them. And I struggle a little bit because my kids are always like, "Mom, is this good? Is this good for me?" Like goldfish, And I'm like, I don't want to label things like good and bad,
Yeah.
And so, I'll just be like, well, just it's not something you can eat like however much you want of, but you can totally have some goldfish,
Yeah.
And but I think like outside of like the food, I think um my kids have like a front row seat to like everything I do, like in competing. And they've been like right there. You know, they don't go to my national shows, but they know what I'm working for. They see me. You know, they have front row seats. They see everything that I've gone through to try to get that pro card. And I think the lessons that they are learning just through seeing that, like, are kind of priceless, because I'm hoping that they've learned that the things like we're doing, you know, are worth doing right, and it can take a long time, and that you don't always win. You know, like a lot of times, like, yeah, you don't always win, and if you place like your self-worth or value on a placing, then you're never going to be happy. You need to I talk to them all the time about, like, because my girls, you know, competing in dance are in that situation a lot too, where they're judged and they're placed. And you know, we talk about what's most important is that you do everything that you can and that you do your best. And and one time my daughter was about to, one of my daughters was being on stage, and she's worried, and she's like, Mom, you don't understand. And then she literally like stopped, and she goes, oh wait, like, you do. And so yeah, I think it's just opened up a doorway to talk to them about those things that are like important things to learn, like, for life, you know, and not just telling them, like showing them. Hopefully showing them. Hopefully that's what they take away. You never know what they're actually taking away from things.
Totally. Yeah, no, I of course have no idea what it's like to be a parent. But to me it sounds like
It's
you're
hard.
doing a great job. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't
You
relate,
think you're
but
like this great person, and then you have kids, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, this is rough. Like, it just really shows you where you need to grow. And it is. It is that tool to, like, to grow and become more patient and have more empathy. And I don't know. I love it, but it's definitely a roller coaster.
yeah, those
especially
are like,
with 3 girls.
oh, I can't imagine. I'm like, I have to take care of myself. I'm one female. Like, what would happen?
That's a lot, right?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
know.
No, but I
They're
think
so fun.
it's awesome. Like what you're doing is really great. And the just the fact that you're aware of how you speak about these things. And I also like how you mentioned like the things that they've asked you, like even like the goldfish example, because I can remember as a kid, like the way that my parents talked about food or taught me about it, and the things that I learned in school as well. And it's amazing how quickly and easily we can begin to define and label foods. That I remember, like, the things I learned
I
about
know.
nutrition was like so helpful. Like, to learn what to look for helped me to continue like choosing the right things for my body without necessarily being like, this is off limits, until of course I became a teenager and went through a bunch of stuff with food that wasn't very fun, but taught me so much, that I'm really grateful for that experience. However, like, I think it's really important, like the fact that we can still focus on the health and fueling our body properly. I love that. It's like it's like one of the purest forms of self-love. Like, if you want to love yourself more, think about the next meal you're putting in your body. You know, like, how are you actually
Yeah.
taking care of this vessel that's like guiding you
Yeah.
through life?
Yeah. You ask your body to do a lot. Like, you know, like, taking care of it is crucial. You know, it's self-love at, like, the core.
Yeah, absolutely. So, whew, I have just like loved talking to you so much. I love
I
you.
know.
This
I
is
love talking to
amazing.
you
Yeah,
too.
thank you. Yes, it's so fun. And I want to, of course, as I always do, ask you if you could just share some advice we'll start with a new competitor, and then we'll go into a competitor who's currently competing and working to get their pro card. Unless, of course, the advice is the same, then go for it.
Okay. All right. So for a new competitor, I think the biggest piece of advice I can give is to not see the competition that you're training for as the end goal. A lot of times you're just so focused, like the end, it all ends at the show. And if you do that, then you don't have enough like mental strength afterwards to make smart choices. And like you and I were talking about earlier, like studies have shown, like literally, like your body's cues for hunger are wrong or off, like after a competition. And I think if you tell yourself, you know, like if you go in with a plan, like that, you know, are gonna keep being meticulous as far as like reversing or just being more cognizant of like what I'm eating and keeping some cardio or whatever, you know, 3 weeks post show or 4 weeks post show or even 2 weeks, like you're just going to put yourself in a better place because you work so hard to get to that stage, and you can lose it really quick. And so I think if you don't see the show as the end, but are mentally preparing yourself so you're going to keep going to have some, you know, like gradual reverse out of it, then I think you'll be in a lot better place mentally and physically. And then for someone who is working to get their pro card, I think my biggest advice is to never count yourself out, just to keep going and to realize that it's the journey there that makes that accomplishment such an accomplishment. At least in my opinion, it does. And just to keep going, because you never know. Like, you never know. I have friends who've like placed, you know, third call outs and got their pro card the next time they went on stage. Like, you can't beat yourself up. Just keep bringing your best to the stage, and be happy with bringing your best.
I love that advice. That's like amazing advice for new competitors and for those who are on their journey to the pro card. I love that. And I really appreciate you sharing that, and also just sharing everything you did and adding so much value and being so open. That meant a lot to me. So I want everybody to be able to thank you as well. So can you just let them know the best place to connect with you, and even so they can like tag you when they post a little screenshot of this episode?
Oh yeah. Yes. So the best way to get a hold of me is to find me is on Instagram, and my username is sjane_devore, DEVORE. Jane's my middle name.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, guys. So to connect with her, of course, check out our Instagram. I'm going to make sure that link is on the episode webpage, www.celestial.fit/podcast. That's also where all the show notes are going to be, and any extra buttons you might be looking for. If you didn't get the chance to listen to the last episode, I did make an announcement. I'm looking to host an event at the end of this year, or maybe sooner, but I got to put some feelers out. So there's going to be a little button on that page too where you can express your interest in coming to that. It's going to be a bikini mastermind live in Southern California. When you submit that you're interested, there's going to be some questions that I ask you. This is going to help me to actually put the event together and make sure that it is viable and something that we can all have fun with and do and experience. And it's all about mending your relationship with food, your body, and of course, creating peace within yourself and with your new goals heading into an improvement season. So for any competitor, this is a great opportunity for you to connect with others, but also to learn and grow through this experience. So Sarah, thank you so much for joining me. This has been absolutely awesome, like I said. And to everybody listening, I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode of Make It Awesome.